Thank you for turning to page 121. Today we're going to jump into the Core Rulebook Update 2022 for Mongoose Traveler 2nd, and we're going to look at combat, what you can do in combat, ways that combat is written in the book, and ways that I do it. So throughout this video, I'm just going to have little tips, little things I've changed at my table just to make combat flow a little bit better. Traveler combat seems intimidating. It's actually not very bad at all. It goes much faster than most role-playing games. D&D combat can take several rounds and many actual minutes of play. In Traveler, they're over pretty quick. Each combat round is only 6 seconds long, and you're using lethal weapons, so the combat tends to go pretty quick. But we're going to take a look at all the different things you can and can't do, significant actions, minor actions, free actions. We're going to take a look at all of that in today's video. So also just a real quick mention on Polar Vortex. It starts on February 14th. It's Friday, Valentine's Day. On the 15th, that Saturday, I will be there at 9 a.m. running a Traveler game for up to 6 people. I have 1 ticket sold already, so 2 more to go. You do have to buy a badge for the con, which gets you access to all the tables and stuff at the con, and then you have to pay $2 extra to sit at my actual event. Sorry, it's the lowest I could go. So hopefully I'll see you folks there. I've got 1 sold already. Don't despair, Mr. Who Bought Only 1. We'll figure something out if it's just you and me playing. That's what I'll do. So we'll figure something out. So I'm also taking new players who've never played Traveler before. Happy to run it for you. So if you've never played the game but you've been curious, this is a perfect opportunity. So hopefully I'll see you at Polar Vortex. But back to today's topic, out of the Core Rulebook 2022 update, combat in Traveler. So what can you do in a combat round in Mongoose Traveler's 2nd edition? Well, we're going to turn to the combat section of the Core Rulebook, right there, page 73, and we're going to look at the combat round. We've already talked about initiative. Now we'll look at the combat round. Each combat round lasts 6 seconds of game time. In each combat round, each Traveler may perform a minor action and a significant action. Travelers take these actions in initiative order, starting with those who rolled the highest initiative check. If 2 or more Travelers are acting in the same initiative order, the one with the highest dex score will go first. If they are still tied, they will act simultaneously. I make that dex or intelligence, just like the initiative. When it's the Traveler's turn to act, they take both their minor and significant actions at the same time before play moves on to another Traveler. So here's our action summary. I like this little chart. It's a nice little table. I'm a big table guy. So for action summary, in every round a Traveler can perform 1 significant action and 1 minor action, or perform 3 minor actions. They may also perform any number of reactions, perform any number of free actions, although the referees are free to impose a limit according to circumstances. So I'm going to explain what these are. Once every Traveler has had a chance to act and the combat round is over and a new combat round begins. Every Traveler retains the same initiative score for every combat round. I do that differently. I have them roll initiative at the beginning of each round. That way, 1 bad initiative roll doesn't ruin your entire combat for you. So, significant actions. Traveler may perform 1 significant action in every combat round, chosen from those below. 1 is the attack. The most common significant action used in combat is an attack. Attack is an attempt to damage or injure an enemy with either a melee or ranged weapon, such as a knife or rifle. The Traveler declares they're going to attack and selects a target. Target may then choose a reaction. The Traveler then makes an appropriate skill check, and as normal, for any average check, if they score 8 or greater, the attack is successful and the damage dealt to the target. We'll deal with damage in another time. So common modifiers are +1 for aiming. This per action spent aiming. Penalties would be a fast-moving target. Oh, I see how this chart goes. Okay, laser sight +1 if aiming, and a short range +1 if aiming. So if I'm aiming and using a laser sight at short range, I would be +3 on my chance to hit. Penalties. Fast-moving target, -1 for every 10 meters of target movement relative to the attacker. Long range, -2. Extreme range, -4. Target and cover, -2. Prone target, -1. So an extreme range target and cover who is prone would be a -7 die modifier. That's very significant in Traveler. Standard skill checks used when making an attack are as follows. Melee attack, 2 dice plus melee appropriate specialty plus strength or dexterity die modifier. You don't get both. You get one or the other. So in melee attack, I would get my strength bonus if I have a high strength, or my dex bonus if I have a higher dex. Ranged attack, 2 dice plus gun combat with the appropriate specialty plus dexterity die modifier. So if I have a gun combat skill of 2 and I've got a dexterity modifier of 1, I would throw 2 dice and then add 2 and 1 to that, so a total of plus 3. So if I threw 8 on the dice and I add 3, I have an 11. That makes my effect a 3. Because my target number was an 8, 11 minus 8 is 3. Some ranged weapons we use a skill other than gun combat. A rocket launcher, for example, we use heavy weapons, portable, while grenades and any other weapons that are thrown, we use athletics, dexterity. When using weapons of this nature, simply substitute gun combat for the appropriate skills. So just be aware that there are some different skills that are used. Common modifiers to ranged attacks. Dice modifiers are commonly used to influence gun combat or heavy weapons or athletics checks when attacking as shown in the common modifiers table, which is this guy that I just looked at. Leadership. We touched on this a little bit in the video on initiative. I'm going to talk about it now. This is one like tactics that unfortunately very often gets overlooked, just forgotten while we're running a combat, but I'm trying to remember more and more. Traveler can pass orders, commands, and suggestions to comrades fighting on the same side. To do this, the traveler makes a leadership check. Intelligence, education, or soch. That you use whatever stat would be appropriate. The effect of this check is the number of bonuses, each equal to die modifier plus 1, the traveler can give to any skill checks, including attack rolls, to other travelers on the same side. The traveler must be able to freely communicate to another traveler in order to grant bonus, and no traveler can benefit from more than 1 die modifier plus 1 bonus on any single attack. So what this means, I have a guy with a great leadership skill. And he's going to go ahead and he's going to roll his leadership, and I get it, and my effect is a 3. I needed an 8, I've rolled an 11, complete. 11 minus 8 is 3, so my effect is 3. I now have 3 die modifier plus 1 bonuses I can hand out to other people on my side in the combat, but I can't use myself. I actually disagree with that, because a lot of leadership is also setting yourself up for success. If you don't succeed, they don't succeed. I allow players to use the skill one time for themselves as well. So they can use 1 die modifier plus 1 for themselves, and then dole out the others as appropriate. However, bad leadership can battle quicker than good leadership can win one. If the effect of the leadership check is negative, the opposing side may inflict a number of penalties equal to the effect to the combatants on the traveler's side. Each penalty is equal to die modifier minus 1 and is applied in the same way as the bonuses for good leadership. So again, if I have an 11 rolled minus 8, my effect is a 3. My bad guys can now give my good guys, so my NPCs can give my good guys 3 minus 1 die modifiers as the melee goes forward. I think that's kind of neat. Minor actions. Instead of performing a significant action, a traveler may instead perform 2 minor actions in its place, giving them a total of 3 minor actions in that combat. That's the 2 significant actions for the significant action plus the 1 they get anyway. And then miscellaneous. A traveler may make a skill check or do something else significant action which requires their full attention, concentration, complicated physical or mental actions, or a combination thereof. These include the following: applying first aid to a wounded comrade, trying to bypass a security system to gain access to a bunker. I see Han Solo in Return of the Jedi in that one, using a psionic talent, getting into a crew position in a vehicle, or calling in an artillery strike. So those are miscellaneous actions, but they would be significant actions. They would take all of my concentration. I could not make any kind of combat action during that. I couldn't fire my gun. I couldn't, punch an opponent, anything like that. I could only concentrate on what it was I was doing. So I think that's pretty cool too. Now we get to minor actions, which you get 1 of every round, or can have 3 if you skip your significant action. Traveler can normally perform a single minor action in combat round, although they can perform up to 3 if they forego their significant action. Aiming. Traveler spends a minor action aiming at a target will receive die modifier plus 1 to the next ranged attack on the target, so long as they do nothing else but aim. A traveler may use consecutive minor actions to aim, gaining a maximum of die modifier +6 on an attack if they are able to spend 6 consecutive minor actions aiming at the same target while doing nothing else. So if I take 2 full rounds, then I do nothing but aim, I'm using 3 minor actions per round, that would give me a die modifier of +6 to hit. Not only does that greatly increase my chance to hit, it's going to increase the damage as well because my effect is going to be higher. So some of the other minor things I can do is change stance. I may stand, crouch, or lie prone as a minor action. I loved the Traveler addressed standing, crouching, lying prone, changing your stance. Most role-playing games don't address that in combat, and it can be cumbersome for the GM, so I'm happy it's here. Drawing and reloading. Most weapons require a minor action to draw or otherwise make ready for combat, and a minor action to reload once they have run out of ammunition. If a weapon requires a longer time for either, this will be noted in the description. So basically, I'm out, I want to pop the clip out, put a new clip in my gun, I'm ready to go. That takes a minor action. I can still fire my weapon in that round. Movement. A traveler may move a number of meters up to their movement score. For humans and most humanoid travelers, this will be 6 meters. Meter is roughly 3 feet. I know it's not quite, but so that would be something in the neighborhood of 18 to 19 feet that they can move for us Americans for each minor action. So if I can move 18 feet and I can do it 3 times in a round, I can move 54 feet in 6 seconds. I'd have to calculate the speed on that, but it's pretty quick. Difficult terrain such as ruins or mud will have the traveler's movement. Being prone will quarter a traveler's movement score. You're crawling on your hands and knees. Some aliens and animals will have different movement scores, and this will be noted in their descriptions. And that's really up to you as the GM to figure out as you go. And then miscellaneous. You may make a skill check or do something else as a minor action if it does not require your full attention, concentration, complicated physical or mental actions. These include the following: spotting a good sniping position, identifying equipment used by an enemy, or picking something off the ground or nearby surface. So the guy has dropped that crystal drive he's got that's got all the information on it, and you reach down, you grab it. That's just a minor action. Then you get free actions. Free actions that can be accomplished so quickly they don't even warrant a minor action. This includes shouting a warning, pushing a button, for example. A traveler may perform as many free actions in a combat round as they wish, although the referee is free to impose a limit if they decide the traveler is attempting to do too much. So if you start shouting all these different complex commands to your team, even though it's not a leadership situation, they would be free actions, but I, as a GM, would only allow you to shout 1 or 2 things. And then I might actually make a perception roll required for them to have noticed that you were talking to them. And extended actions. Some skill checks take longer than a single combat round to complete. A traveler may be attempting to download valuable data from a computer as a firefighter erupts around them, for example. Or they may be desperately trying to fix the engine of an air raft so they and their friends can escape an ambush. I like that one. I've used that a few times. When performing a skill check that will take longer than a combat round, roll for a suitable time frame as shown on page 62. We'll take a look at that in a minute. This will indicate how long it will take to complete the skill check. Note that a traveler can sometimes opt to go faster or slower on such a check as shown on the same page. So you can modify. If you're going to go quicker, you can take a negative modifier to make the thing go faster. If you want to take a little bit longer to be sure you get it right, you go a little slower. If the traveler sustains damage while performing an extended action, they must make an immediate check with the skill they are currently using, with the amount of damage sustained as a negative die modifier. If they fail the skill check, the round's work will not count toward the completion of the task. Failure with an effect of -6 or less will ruin -6 or greater than -6, I guess, will ruin the task completely and the traveler will have to start again from scratch. So basically, I'm trying to download that stuff. It's taking a long time. I'm trying to override some command codes or some security features, so I have to stay with it. So my extended actions are going, but I'm hit by rifle fire. I take a total of 4 damage to my person after my armor is taken into account and everything else. I take 4. So now my action takes a -4 die modifier, and if that cranks me to a negative effect, then I can lose the effect, the -6 or greater effect. I can lose the action entirely and have to start the whole thing over. So that's kind of interesting. I like extended actions a little bit. We're going to jump to page 62 real quick, and we're going to touch on what skills you need, what skill rolls you need for some of these, and that's time frames right there. There's your time frames for what you're doing. So there's your 1 second punching, shooting, kicking, jumping, one die combat rounds 6 seconds. And so if I'm going to apply first aid, for instance, to my buddy, that's 1 die 6 minutes. Actually, that's changed to rounds in one of the later editions. Basic technical task, 1 die 10 plus 10 minutes, 10 minutes increments, more complex technical tasks, searching an area thoroughly, that kind of thing. So if I'm trying to override the security in the program, it may take me longer. So it's just a lot of things you can roll into combat. The thing to remember is you want the combat to flow, and you want it to flow for you and for your players. So I wouldn't get too buried in actions and reactions. If something just seems beyond the scope of what you would allow at that moment, then just disallow it. Reactions. A traveler who's about to be attacked can react, either dodging a shot or parrying a blow. This is called a reaction, and a traveler can perform an unlimited amount of reactions in every combat round. I disagree with that, by the way. To me, you can only perform 1 or 2. However, every time a traveler performs a reaction, they suffer DM -1 on their next set of actions. So I do a reaction. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to dodge. I'll discuss diving for color, and parrying, and then I'll talk about the die modifier. So dodging. A traveler who is dodging will inflict a penalty equal to their dex, die modifier, or athletics, dexterity, whichever is higher, to the attacker's roll. So if I have a dex die modifier of +2, and I decide to dodge, that acts as a negative modifier on them. So it'll be a -2 for their attack. Every attack must be dodged separately, so if a traveler is shot at by 2 enemies in the same round, they can dodge both, but they suffer -2 on their next actions. Both ranged and melee attacks may be dodged. Diving for cover. This is similar to dodging, but instead of just ducking down or away from the attack, a traveler will be throwing themselves to the ground, hopefully behind something solid. A traveler may only dive for cover from ranged attacks. Traveler diving for cover will inflict a die modifier -2 on the attack roll for every attacker who targets them in this combat round, and may get a bonus to protection. They may dive behind any object within 1.5 meters of their current position, so roughly 9 to 10 feet. If there are no suitable cover nearby, the traveler only inflicts die modifier -1 to any attack rolls made against them for being a prone target. However, a traveler diving for cover will forego their next action completely. They're too busy trying to avoid being hurt. I get that, and I agree with that. And interestingly, in dodge, or any of these reactions, when do I get to react? It says immediately. Now, when I do a reaction where I'm just going to parry, does that take up my significant action? It doesn't say. It doesn't tell us that. I think yes. I think if I'm parrying, that's a significant thing. I've trained in martial arts. I know that it requires a lot of concentration to parry or block an attack. It's not like I can just do it now, quickly react, of course, but they are two separate things as you're doing them. One is blocking the attack, and the other is then taking advantage of whatever you've just done. So that, to my mind, would be your action for the next round. Parrying. A traveler in close combat may attempt to parry an opponent's melee attack as a reaction. In doing so, they will inflict their melee skill as a negative die modifier to the attacker's attack roll. So you're swinging your fist. I'm going to go ahead and parry it, block it. I use my melee skill modifier as a negative modifier against your attack. So if I have 2 in my melee skill, you'll be -2 when you try to strike me. So that's kind of interesting. I like it. I know what they were trying to go for. They wanted a rules lighter version of combat, and they succeeded, but it did leave some questions. For instance, do I have to do my minor action before or after my significant action? Doesn't matter. At my table, you can do it either way. Here, it seems to indicate you have to do the significant action first and one minor action. They're always listed as significant first, minor second. So it implies that you have to do them in that sequence. I don't run it that way. I don't think that's the way they meant it. I think it's just the way it came out. So now we're going to go a little bit to your melee attack. Melee is when you're within 2 meters of an enemy and you are locked in close combat. At this short range, certain rules apply. Melee attacks may be made, and then you see below on the chart. Neither the traveler nor any enemy may attack any other target other than those they're in close combat with. I disagree with that. If there's a desperate situation where I'm trying to save a friend and the guy's got my gun out to the side, I still feel I could maybe fire the gun to scare off the guy who's going to hurt my friend or maybe wound him. So I don't hold that rule. Only single-handed ranged attacks such as attack weapons such as pistols may make ranged attacks against the target in close combat. Note that a pistol can be parried in close combat, representing the weapon getting knocked aside. I disagree with that one also. There are some weapons that are made for closer combat. I'm looking at you, shotgun, and I do allow that. Larger weapons such as rifles may only be used as clubs. Depends on the situation. If one combatant moves while locked in close combat, their enemy may make an immediate and free attack at die modifier +2 to the attack roll. So I try to leap out of the combat and run away. You get a die modifier +2 for one free attack at my back as I try to run away. And now we take a look at weapons. A variety of weapons are available to travelers, from humble knives and clubs to high-powered laser rifles and plasma guns. All these weapons share some common characteristics. And then we have the tech level of the weapon, the range at which is effective, and range is a whole nother animal in Traveler. Maybe I'll go into that in a different video. Short range. Effective range of the weapon is range. I'll just do it now. The range that an average user might have a chance of hitting a target. Short range, if a target lies within 1/4 of a weapon's range score, the attacker will gain die modifier +1 to all rolls as long as they're within the short range. Long range, if an attacker is beyond the weapon's range but less than twice the range away, it's at long range. The attacker suffers a die modifier -2 when making an attack roll. This is where aiming would come in really handy. Extreme range. If a target is beyond the weapon's long range but less than 4 times the range away, it is at extreme range. The attacker suffers die modifier -4 when making an attack roll. It's all pretty straightforward. I wish that they had set up the tables a little differently so that we could record our ranges in these. So for instance, let's look at the rifle. The range is 500 meters. Effective range, let's see, short range would be anybody up to 125 meters. I get +1 to hit on that. That's pretty good. Long range would be up to 1,000 meters, and I'm only -2 die modifier. And at 2,000 meters, I'm only -4. So that makes a rifle pretty powerful in Traveler. I wish they had set these charts up so I could put those in. I realize I can make my own, but note that unless a weapon has the scope trait, all attacks made at range greater than 100 meters are automatically considered to be extreme range. This assumes the Traveler is in combat situation. If the Traveler is in no stress environment, the referee is free to increase this up to 300 meters. So if I'm sitting on a rooftop waiting for my target, I'm very calm, I've got my heart rate under control, I get that benefit. Damage. This is the base amount of damage dealt by the weapon when it successfully hits target. Damage is covered in more detail below. Kilograms, how much it weighs, the cost of buying, how much it costs to buy it. Magazine, how much it can carry. And then the magazine cost, how much spares cost. And any weapons traits that it might have, like 0G and that kind of thing. So now we go to damage. The weapon in Traveler. Each weapon in Traveler lists the damage it inflicts a number of dice. For rifle, for example, is a damage score of 3. Upon a successful hit, damage is rolled 4 with the effect of the attack roll added to the total. So if my effect is 2 and I roll 11, I add 11 plus 2 is 13. My damage is 13. Damage is initially applied to the target's endurance. If a target is reduced to 0 endurance, then any excess damage is deducted from either the target's strength or dex. I allow that to be split too, by the way, so that people can stay in the fight longer. Traveler has enough penalties for being wounded with how your skills degrade as you're injured, especially in dexterity and a missile combat, that kind of thing. So I do allow it to split. So an attack, if I have my endurance is gone and I've got 6 left on each strength and dexterity, and I take 6 points of damage, rather than drop either strength or dex to 0 and make me unconscious, I allow the player to split it 3 and 3. As an effective 3 strength and 3 dexterity. He's not very effective, but he's still mobile and still active. Let's see. If strength or dex are reduced to 0, the Traveler becomes unconscious and any further damage is deducted from the remaining physical statistics. If all 3 physical characteristics, strength, dex, and endurance, are reduced to 0, the Traveler has been killed. When characteristics have been eroded by damage, their die modifiers should be recalculated and the impaired die modifier used until the damage is healed, and recovering damage is shown on page 82. I'm not really going to talk about recovering damage in this video. This is just about inflicting it. So then we're going to take a quick look at a melee attack. When a melee attack is successful, the attacker adds their strength die modifier to the damage rolled for the weapon, in addition to the effect of the attack roll. Bigger things hit harder. Trained martial artist also hitting you, I would probably allow his dexterity to add to that, but it would have to be somebody that's trained in martial arts. Traveler doesn't really have a martial arts system. It's had it in various other incarnations. They tried to keep Mongoose Traveler 2nd a little more streamlined, so they clump all their gun combats as missile projectile combat. That's every gun that shoots a projectile, you are skilled with it. And then if you have energy weapon, any weapon that uses energy, you're skilled in that. They didn't differentiate by the particular types. There's a lot of difference between shooting 6-shot 38 and shooting a Gauss rifle, but per traveler, they're the same skill. Armor. Armor reduces the damage sustained in an attack by the value of the protection score. An attack with effect 6-up always inflicts at least 1 point of damage, regardless of actual damage or protection score. Some weapons have an AP or armor piercing trait. These weapons ignore an amount of armor equal to their AP score. So for armor, I have armor on. I've got cloth. It's going to be 8. So I eat up the first 8 damage given to me. So my damage earlier of 13 goes against my cloth armor. Minus 8 becomes 5. I take 5 damage first to my endurance. So armor can really save your life in Traveler. Always have it handy. If somebody has armor piercing, they take away that value. So my 8, if I'm against a weapon that's got an armor piercing of 3, my 8 minus 3 becomes 5. The armor value is only 5 against that attack. And then cover. When bullets start flying, travelers are advised to take cover behind something solid. Traveler using cover to shield themselves while engaged in combat inflicts die modifier -2. All ranged attacks made against them. So that's pretty straightforward. Hiding. If a traveler is able to completely hide yourself in cover so the enemy can't see them, you can just stay hidden. However, if an enemy is aware of the traveler's presence, they can still be attacked. So hiding is not going to be one of your best activities in combat, in my opinion. And here we have another chart that shows the bonus protection you get for being behind vegetation. So +2. If you're behind a tree trunk, it's +6. Stone wall is 8. Civilian vehicle is a 10. Armored vehicle is a 15. And fortifications is a 20. And the interesting thing there is that stacks with your armor. So if I'm wearing my cloth armor, which is +8, and I'm hiding behind a tree trunk, that gives me +6. That's 14. So now the damage of 13 that was inflicted earlier gets reduced by 14. So I take no damage. So that's kind of neat. I like that it stacks. You can get subdermal armor and things like that. I've talked about that in other videos. And maybe that's got a value of 2 and I'm wearing cloth armor. I have an armor value of 8 + 2 of 10. That's pretty sweet. Destructive weapons. Some weapons are so powerful they are capable of blasting apart small vehicles with a single shot. Such weapons are referred to as destructive weapons. These would be starship blasters used in melee somehow. Star Wars did that in Phantom Menace. Damage score with 2Ds. So the destructive rolling, a destructive weapon multiplies the total rolled damage by 10. So if my damage is 3DD and I throw a 10, that damage is 10 times 10, 100 points of damage. Don't get hit by a destructive weapon. They will destroy you. And then we have finally grappling and dual weapons. Those are the two that are left to discuss in this. Grappling. In close combat, a traveler may try to wrestle or restrain their enemy rather than simply hitting them. To grapple an enemy, a traveler makes an opposed melee unarmed check with their target, each using strength or dex modifier. The winner of the check may choose to do one of the following. Force an opponent to go prone on the ground. Disarm an opponent. If the effect is 6-up, you may take their opponent's weapon. That's kind of neat. Throw an opponent 1 die meters, causing 1 die damage. This automatically ends the grapple. And again, your armor would apply against that 1 die damage. Inflict damage equal to 2 plus the effect of the melee check. This damage ignores any armor. So you hit him in the face, basically. Inflict damage using a pistol or a small blade-sized weapon. Escape and move away as a normal weapon action, ending the grapple. Drag their opponent up to 3 meters. Continue the grapple with no other effect. While involved in the grapple, the traveler may not perform any significant or minor action except to make opposed melee unarmed checks. And then dual weapons. You want to be that guy that's fighting with two weapons. Hey, that's always a dream. Under some circumstances, a referee may allow a traveler with two weapons to fight with two weapons at the same time. These have to be weapons that can be reasonably used in a hand, single hand each, such as two blades, two pistols, or a blade and a pistol. If a traveler is using two weapons at the same time, they may attack with both in the same combat round. However, they may not aim with either and will suffer die modifier -2 to the attack rolls of both. This penalty will not apply if the traveler is carrying two weapons but only attacks with one. So if I have two of the same pistol and I'm going to fire them both per the rule written, each shot takes a die modifier -2. So -2 for my right hand, I'm right-handed, and then -2 for my left hand. I actually don't do it that way. I only make the die modifier -2 apply to the second attack. It just makes more sense to me. But there you have it. This ended up being a longer video than I really thought it was going to be, but this is combat in Traveler. These are your actions, significant action, minor, major. Traveler combat is really sweet. It's simple, it's elegant. You're not going to get bogged down unless you choose to, which, by the way, can be fun. There are times you want the combat to be really, really involved and difficult. But the form as given here is pretty open. There's a lot of stuff that you need to interpret as the GM, and you need to be ready for that. I would recommend, if you haven't run Traveler, I would recommend sitting down with some dice and pen and paper and doing some mock combats and see how the combats go, and do the range combat and then do the melee. You're going to find that this is different than other games like D&D. This combat is a lot more lethal and can lay out a character very, very quickly. But that's it. That's all I've got to say today in the combat round. I hope you found this informative. If you did, please leave comments below, like and subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends. And please take a look at the Patreon, see if you can help me out there. And I'll see you next time on page 121.